We will not discuss the Kardashian baby or its name, I promise. I'm Charlie Sykes, and Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, it is officially summer. Friday was the longest day of the year. The bad news, from now on, the days get shorter. But more good news, Summerfest opens this week. The Heat win the NBA championship again. President Obama speaks in Berlin to mixed reviews. Best known as Tony Soprano, actor James Gandolfini dies at the age of 51. A compromise on border security pushes immigration reform toward passage in the U.S. Senate. The Milwaukee County Board fires the county's top lawyer for no particular reason. A shooting at Milwaukee's Potawatomi Casino raises questions about security after guards basically don't do anything. Apparently that's the policy, but hey, they had a no guns allowed sign, so that should have worked, right? But we start with the action in Madison this week. The legislature approves a massive budget bill and sends it to Governor Scott Walker's desk. The budget cuts taxes by nearly $1 billion, expands school choice, provides a tax deduction for families with children in private schools, raises spending for public schools, legalizes bounty hunters, lifts most public employee residency rules, expands Badger Care while rejecting the expansion of Medicaid, and allows police to collect DNA samples from suspects arrested for felonies. Joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Michael Holt, former State Representative Michelle Litchens, political strategist Linda Bruin, and political consultant Mary Jo Boss. There's so much to go at. Who are the biggest winners and the biggest losers in this budget, Mary Jo?
Well, I think Scott Walker has to be the biggest winner. He has his platform laid out for him for the next election. He cut taxes, he reformed education, he did so many things, and the Republicans in the legislature made it even better.
Okay, biggest loser.
I would say Peter Barca, because he has shown that the Assembly Democrats are basically useless. They didn't even try.
Okay, Linda Bruin, biggest winners and losers.
Well, I think the biggest winners, once you get past the politicians involved, are clearly families who want the voucher system to expand. And I think that even though there's some technical limits on the voucher expansion, that opens the door to eventually it'll be statewide and there won't be caps, et cetera. So I think they're really the biggest winners. I do think UW students are big winners because of the tuition freeze. I think that's a big deal for both Democrats and Republicans.
Okay.
Well, everyone in the state is a winner. And I'd just like to really go back to what happened 4 years ago in the budget. The Democrats increased taxes by $5 billion. Anyway, it was a mess. And now we go to a balanced budget again where we have tax cuts. And we actually are going to make sure that people that are under the poverty level in the state of Wisconsin have access to Badger Care. 85,000 people that are on a waiting list right now.
I'm going to go back, Lynn. So who are the biggest losers?
Actually, the Democrats in the state assembly this year, I think, were the biggest losers.
Okay, I forgot to ask you the biggest losers.
Right, well, once you get rid of the politicians. Frankly, I do think Badger Care recipients, because they're going to be forced into a pool of marketplace insurance buying that'll be much more expensive than they currently get under Badger Care. So even though the Republicans are right in saying that the more people will be eligible, they will not opt it because they won't be able to afford it.
Okay, Michael Holt, biggest winners and losers.
Well, the big winner has to be the Republican Party. They got everything they wanted, handed to them on a silver platter. Democrats are the biggest loser. And I found it very, very strange that the Assembly Democrats didn't even try to introduce a single amendment. They may as well just move down to Chicago like they did a couple of years ago. It's just, they're totally powerless. They're impotent.
I mean, there are a lot of winners and a lot of losers on all of this. I mean, obviously, taxpayers are winners considering that we are going to get more money and keep more money in our own pockets. But as I said on my radio show, I also think that public employees are big winners. Think about how their world has changed. They are now free to decide whether to join a union or not. They are free to decide whether to pay union dues to the union bosses or not. And now they are free at last to be able to decide where their family will live, where their kids will grow up. You could even call this the public employee liberation budget. And in terms of losers, I got to say, you can talk about the politicians in Madison. Mayor Tom Barrett could not have had a worse year when you think about it. He went all in on the trolley boondoggle. He went all in on residency, and he ended up getting absolutely nothing. Was there ever a time when Milwaukee had less clout in Madison than they do right now?
Well, I think this is like a historical bump. Whenever you have a completely Republican legislature and a Republican governor, and you happen to have the guy sitting in the seat of the mayoralship of our largest city that's a Democrat and is actually run against the mayor, I mean, that's what happens in this. And it'll happen again next time,
It didn't
next
have
go
to
round.
be. It didn't have to be this way. On Joint Finance Committee, they considered Democrat amendments and passed Democrat amendments. You had a Republican legislature in the Assembly, at least, that was willing to work with them and to consider amendments. And Peter Barca just withdrew the amendments. He was the only one who spoke. Those freshmen have to go back and run for re-election, not having fought for anything, not introduced. They didn't speak on the biggest budget of the entire
Yeah, but their position, and I'm not saying I totally agree with it, but their position was that even if we get a few of our amendments passed, this is so flawed we can't vote for it. The weakness of that argument is that happens whenever you're out of power, and my view would have been to try and get at least a few fixes in and to make things a little bit better than they were. But they clearly took this kind of no-hold-bards.
But the same line, the Democrats shot themselves in the foot. You know, probably the most effective Democrat was Jason Fields. The Democratic Party conspired to get rid of him.
Yeah, gone.
And then we have Lena Taylor, who's on Joint Finance. Love her or hate her, whatever. She was effective and she was a voice for Milwaukee. They got rid of her. Chris Larson's got rid of her. So, I mean, it's like they were continually shooting themselves in the foot.
It is amazing, though, the number of major things that were done in this budget that almost got lost in the shuffle. I mentioned residency before. The reform of a lot of the entitlement programs, very dramatic. The reform of unemployment insurance, and yet there was virtually no attention to that in the final days of the budget debate. Okay, what has your glass half full and what has your glass half empty this week? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt, you're first.
Oh, it's half full because according to the latest report, the number of impoverished elderly dropped. It was half empty because in every other category, poverty increased.
Michelle Litchens.
My glass is half full because our federal government has finally said that they're going to stop printing money, which is a good thing. But my glass is half empty because I think we have too many investors who are not concerned with the future of our country and our kids, and so they might not be doing the right thing with the stock market.
Okay, Lynn.
Well, my glass is partially full because there are some things in the state budget that I like, including what I mentioned as the UW student freeze. But it's really 2/3 or plus empty because there are things in this budget that will really harm Wisconsin residents, particularly their health care rights. And in addition, there's virtually nothing that I see in this budget that will help improve Wisconsin's dismal job creation record.
Okay, Mary Jo Boss.
Well, my glass is half empty because I think there's more pork and less true education reform in this budget than I'd like to see with a Republican control of the entire process. But my glass is half full because this budget is so much better than anything passed under Democrat control that we ought to be celebrating.
Well, my glass is half empty because the Democrats did roll over and play dead, but it's half full because, well, we didn't have to listen to all of their bloviation because a little bit of Peter Barca goes a long, long way. Next on Sunday Inside, another one bites the dust. The Milwaukee County Board marks off a target on its hit list. The politics of payback. Milwaukee County supervisors voted to fire the county's top lawyer last week without saying why. The board voted 13-5 to fire Corporation Counsel Kimberly Walker and appointee of County Executive Chris Abley. Supervisors are unhappy with Abley for his support of state legislation that cuts their salaries and their budgets, and there was speculation that Walker's firing was retaliation. Abley expressed outrage, and County Supervisor Deanna Alexander said that as a result of offering legal advice the board did not want to hear, she has been placed on the notorious county board hit list. The only reason, she said, that our attorney is in hot water is because she crossed paths with some politicians looking to settle a score. Shame on them. You used to work with these guys. What is this all about?
Well, I'm in a bit of an odd position because I left a year ago, and if Ms. Walker was still performing the way she was a year ago, even though I have no axe to grind against the county executive, I would not have supported her reappointment. That being said, I don't know, because the supervisors aren't saying why they're firing her. I don't know why, whether they fired her for cause, which I would have done, or whether or not there was a political reason for this. And I think they did, I think it was I think it was, I guess, in an insult or not treating someone with respect, that if you're going to fire them, that you at least tell them why. You don't have to rub their nose in it publicly, but you at least owe them the courtesy of an explanation.
Yeah, but isn't this part of this pattern, this political temper tantrum that the county board is having, the attempt to get back, retaliate against Chris Abele to make life absolutely miserable for the county executive and anyone that is in their crosshairs?
Well, Chris Abele is the one who's fired a lot of people without any preemptory knowledge. So there's something odd going on in county government with how people are being hired and fired.
Okay, Michael Holt.
You know, the NAACP is now getting involved. The Association of African American Attorneys have gotten involved. And you say you would fire her for a cause. I don't know what the cause is, unless she was considered by some to be an uppity black woman. She was the first African American woman to hold this position. If it is insulting that the board would not give any reason for it.
I agree, they should have given a reason, but the cause issue is, I don't want to add fire to this. I don't think she had some horrific action that she took or anything like that. I just didn't like her job performance. That's different. The board didn't even say that. That's where I'm upset, because they're not saying it.
Like I said, you can't make this stuff up anymore. And everyone looking at Milwaukee County is like, oh, now we know why they wanted to go in and change what's going on in Milwaukee County, because they are completely nuts. And the fact that they did let this lady go without giving her a reason and saying that she's not performing her job, we all know that they did it specifically for political purposes.
Well, and from the county board perspective, the worst part of this is it's not going to get them where they want to go. Who in their world, if anybody has any talent at all, why would you want to go work for these jokers and be fired at their political whim because they want to get back at somebody else?
Well, this does raise the question about whether or not they are going to make Milwaukee County government completely dysfunctional, even more dysfunctional than it already is, because, you know, there are other positions, like, for example, the head of the mental health unit, who they apparently are going to be slow walking that appointment as well. I mean, in the last week, think about it. You had one county supervisor screaming at the chief of staff of the county executive, "We will have your head on a stick," yelling at him. And then you had another county supervisor, Patricia Jersick, pushing this retaliatory ordinance aimed at shutting up Sheriff David Clark, you know, banning him from using PSAs. You wonder how much of their energy and their time and their brain power is just simply devoted to getting back at their political opponents, whether or not they have any intention of trying to improve Milwaukee County government. Now, you may not want to hear it, but we're going to tell you anyway. Let's dish out some unsolicited advice. Michael Holt, you are first.
Well, to the county exec, you better tighten up your drawers, because they're coming at you full steam now.
And Michelle Litchins.
President Obama, it's not 2008 anymore. So when you're traveling the world, you know, you could share a hotel room with your wife or even the same hotel and save the taxpayers a couple $1 million.
Okay. Linda Bruner.
Well, my advice is to the activists opposed to Wisconsin's open pit mining. Look, I feel your pain, but if you break the law, expect to be prosecuted, and if you turn violent, expect the public to turn against you.
Mary Jo Boss.
My unsolicited advice is for State Representative Howard Markline. If you want run against Dale Schultz as the true conservative, you need to distinguish yourself in the eyes of the voters. And voting against the budget, just like Dale Schultz, isn't going to do the trick.
Okay, my unsolicited advice, if you or anyone you know is offered a job in county government, run. Next on Sunday Inside, protesters try to disrupt test drilling for a mine in northern Wisconsin. Now, how big a problem is it? Are these your garden variety protesters, or are they eco-terrorists? Last week, Indy mine activists assaulted workers doing test drilling for an iron ore mine in northern Wisconsin and then bragged about it online. This is what the activists had to say. They said they jumped on trucks in the collection tank and threw pieces of equipment like pickaxes, fire extinguishers, and shovels down the hillside into the thick of the woods. Fences were knocked over and broken, and personal cigarettes were raided out of one of the company vehicles. In addition to that, a female staffer was attacked, had her cell phone slapped from her hand and stolen. And there were bolts on a bridge that were loosened by somebody. And despite all that, there were no arrests. And as of right now, the DA's office is still considering charges. The legislature decided last week not to bar access to the mining site. So the question is, are we going to take this seriously? Michelle Litchins.
We have to start taking this seriously right now, and I'm actually starting to see what happened in the state capitol 2 years ago happen again when they didn't immediately kick out the protesters the first night that they were there like they should have. Then we saw thousands and thousands of people come down there and protest. I think what kind of happened, especially up north, is that some of these sheriffs, might not have seen this coming. You know, they had protesters, obviously not homegrown, go up there and do what they're doing. So we need to make sure that we pursue these people and we prosecute them, because they should have been prosecuted by now.
All right, but the legislature had a chance. There was a proposal to limit access to the mining site. The mining company was very much in favor of that. Why did that not go through?
Specifically, I don't know, but I know that they're still talking about it because it's something that has to be done.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Lynn, you mentioned this before.
Well, you know, I know that there's civil disobedience,
Right.
but this is not the 1960s,
Right.
and it's not peace and love up there. This is not, you know, they're not waving peace signs. That, you know, and to the extent that they're breaking the law and committing vandalism, I totally agree they need to be prosecuted. And I do agree that this will continue and could get out of hand, and so that the local sheriffs and the police authorities have to treat it seriously. On the other hand, I don't want to stop the ability of somebody to protest. They just have to be very careful. The world's changed.
But you have to draw the line between civil disobedience and what they are doing here. And I think Michelle's analogy to the Capitol is right, at least half right, because you know, if you don't crack down early, it can get out of hand before you know it. But these people are not like the protesters in the Capitol, because they are escalating their physical threats. Mary Jo Boss.
I think it is like the Capitol in one respect, that you have a DA who is not aggressively announcing his intent to put these people in jail. And if you don't have that, you have to have the media and the alternative media shining the light of day on this. And it's the only way you're going to turn the public against these protesters.
Okay, Michael Holt.
Well, it is the 60s again, because there's protests all over the place. You know, I mean, we had the protest last week at the state capitol. Remember the situation at UWM? The police did nothing. UWM, you know, patrols did nothing. So you're sending all of these these mixed signals anyway. But when it gets to the point of being violent, then you're going to see a change of heart, and everybody, the hammer is going to fall. Not until
but they think, well, you know, you may be right. I hope you're not right, because you know, the kinds of things that they are doing, if they escalate, as they are threatening to escalate, someone is going to be injured, maimed, or killed. And at that point, everyone's going to be wondering, how did this happen? Why did we not see it coming? Were we unable to say, you know what, we are going to protect the life and the property of, you know, this company? They are following the law. There is the principle of the rule of law. I have mixed feelings about whether the legislature should have taken any action, because you know what? I know exactly how it would have played if they would have restricted access. That would have been the headline. It would have been the legislature would have been the bad guys, you know, restricting access. Whereas now, you know, we're going to see the face of these protesters, and frankly, I agree with Lynn. I think the public will turn against them. Hopefully, they will turn against them before somebody is hurt here.
Right, and some of these people, and you got to be very sophisticated in this, because a lot of the initial goals for them is to get arrested. They'd love to be arrested and become martyrs for the cause. And the problem is, with today and age, it is not the 1960s, and it's too easy for whack jobs to go turn violent, and then everyone.
Exactly. So is what they said this week the same thing as what you heard? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt.
Well, actually, I was going to say what the county board said in firing their corporate counsel, but they actually didn't say anything. What I gathered, what I heard then was, this is our last little attempt to pimp slap the county exec.
Okay, Michelle Litchens.
What the Democrats said on the floor of the Assembly while discussing the budget was, oh, but what I heard was, we don't have any ideas.
Linda Bruin.
More than 650 prosecutors, judges, and victims advocates vocally opposed the Republicans' plan to bring back commercial bail bondsmen in the state. But since the Republicans overwhelmingly endorsed bringing them back, what I heard was the Republicans picking the wishes of a special interest for profit group over the wishes of law enforcement.
Mary Jo Boss.
Assembly Democrat leader Peter Barca withdrew all the Democrat amendments to the state budget and said, we have no hope for this budget. What I heard was, we have no fight left in our caucus.
Well, what they said was they had a new compromise to tighten border security on the immigration bill. What I heard was we need a fig leaf to convince conservatives to vote for this bill. Next on Sunday Inside, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. But first, here's your morning news update. It's time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Michael Holt, you are first.
Big time losers, Democrat and Democratic Party supporters. They didn't even put up a fight over the budget. My winner, Gerard Randall, who's been named the new president of the board of SDC. Hopefully Gerard can salvage this sinking ship.
Michelle Hitchens.
My winners this week are Congressman Ryan and Sensenbrenner for voting against the Farm Bill. The bill, first adopted in 1933 to address farmers' credit, corn prices, and soil erosion, has blown up into an almost $1 trillion food stamp and special interest bill. Thank you for standing up for taxpayers. My losers this week are the Madison protesters who are chalking Walker should be jailed and working with Republicans equal working with Nazis. Unlike the Nazis, Republicans support enthusiastic debate. Since your Democrats decided not to debate the budget, maybe you should be writing about them.
Linda Bruin.
Well, we're all losers after the U.S. House failed to pass the all-important Farm Bill last week. But the biggest loser is Speaker John Boehner, who was surprised and personally embarrassed when he couldn't get enough of his own Republicans to support it. My winners are the bipartisan Gang of Eight and their newest version of the immigration bill. The bill still has flaws that make people on both sides nervous, but it is a step forward toward achieving reform.
Mary Jo Boss.
My winner this week is the Madison City Council, which in a rare moment of reason rejected Mayor Paul Soglin's thuggish proposal to force all nonprofits working with the city to publicly disclose their political activities. My loser this week is State Senator Dale Schultz. Since there was never any doubt that he was going to vote like a Democrat, the Republican majority didn't even bother to try to deal with him or give him anything to get him on board with the budget. This irrelevant rhino is now officially on the endangered species list.
Well, my winners, as I said earlier, public employees free at last. Thanks to this budget, they are now free to choose whether to join a union and now even free to decide where they can live. Loser, nobody did worse on this budget than Mayor Tom Barrett. He went all in on the downtown trolley boondoggle and the residency rules and lost on both. Milwaukee's influence in Madison has never been lower. Thanks, Mayor Tom. Thanks for joining us. Join me for my radio show Monday morning on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. Have a great week.